trigger is a much lower figure, and that building would require seismic retrofit. So we would be putting children in two identical school buildings that have a different level of safety, and that seems inappropriate. And so DSA has looked to determine how can we get a more uniform way of making this determination, and at the same time take DSA out of the middle of this calculation and take us away from determining what the comparables are and this cost estimation business. And so we've looked to OPSC and the community college chancellor's office to help us establish a replacement cost. OPSC, as the state funding agency, they have established replacement costs in California. They go to, my understanding, a great deal of expense every year to upgrade this school construction cost, and it's uniform across the state. And this EB4 refers to that cost estimate as a baseline for determining the 50%. The community colleges have a slightly different method of determining replacement costs. They have a program called Fusion, and we're in the process of discussing with the community colleges how we can work with them to establish a replacement cost through their Fusion program. And that's ongoing, but we hope to have that completed very soon so that we can get this out on the street. But this is an important item, not only to get an established cost, but so schools and districts can know what their budget is on a project well in advance. They hire design professionals who can advise them as to whether they're going to cross this 50% if it's an established figure early in the planning of a new or the rehabilitation of an existing school building. Quite often now they have a budget and then they come to DSA towards the end of this long planning procedure. And we tell them, oh, by the way, you'll need to dump another couple $1 million into that project. And the schools either have to reduce scope or come up with some additional funds. I think it would be beneficial to everyone to be able to have a true budget early on when they first start planning a project. They can make a determination. We're going to do a lot to this building. We're probably going to cross this 50% line. They'll know what the square footage replacement costs, and they'll know where that 50% line is, and they'll be able to determine and put in a budget for seismic retrofit. And this is very important. I think it's beneficial to everybody. It will streamline the DSA process. Sometimes this discussion about the 50%, depending on where it falls in the process, can take time out of the DSA review period and throw school projects off schedule. So again, I think it's great to have a clear budget at the beginning and also help establish a review time through DSA by not having to stumble over this process. We would like to take a look at this, put this out on the street, and see if we can't find a little smoother path for getting projects that have rehabilitations, additions in them, and move them through. And I'll open up to any questions anybody has about this.
Hi, Doug, it's Julie. Doug, I just want to clarify, is this 50% rule, is it calculated on the project at the school site, or is it calculated per building?
It's per building. So you may have an application that would have 3 or 4 buildings on it, and the DSA 1 submittal application has a single figure. So you would give us a project cost. And any building that probably looks like it might be in this category should probably have a pre-application with us. We come in and do an evaluation, talk about how the evaluation is, and determine whether all 4 buildings on this example or only one of them come in. The issue when you have multiple buildings on an application and one building crosses 50% line or appears that it might, there needs to be separate accounting. DSA works off of a single figure, an estimate at the time the application is submitted. And then at the closeout of the project, there's a Form 168 that identifies the actual construction costs. But again, that Form 168 identifies the project cost, where we need to establish what the actual cost was per building. So if you have multiple buildings on an application and one or more of them are in this category, there is the additional work of keeping separate accounting for each building so we can evaluate that you did fall under the 50%. One of the hazards is that districts sometimes come in with, they feel they're under the 50%, they're at 45% or something. So all of you have probably encountered the fact that very few projects come in exactly on budget. There's always overruns, change documents, and that cost creeps up a little bit. So if you're close to this 50% and during construction you find dry rot or some kind of problem with the structure that you hadn't anticipated, and your costs go up, you can cross this 50%, and now you're required to do a seismic upgrade, even though you're well into your project, and that may make it more expensive to do that seismic upgrade than if it had been planned for in the beginning. So yeah, it is building by building, not by application.
Well, I guess I'll be setting up a pre-application process, a meeting.
It's a service that DSA provides. If you go to normal building departments, they will charge you a fortune for pre-application building currently. And for as long as I've been here, these pre-apps are without charge, and they are a tremendous benefit for our clients and for DSA. It's a frontline step of the collaboration to make a safe, accessible school.
Thank you very much.
The forms for the pre-application meetings are on our website. Specifically, they're per regional office and they're DSA 91, 92, 93, and 94. So that's how you can make a request for a pre-app meeting.
You fill out that form and there's a button at the bottom of the form. You hit that, it will automatically go to the project supervisor's, project services supervisor email, and they will contact you and set up a meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey, Doug, this is Fred over at Citrus College. I just wanted to tell you that we appreciated your guys' input the other day at the Facilities Task Force meeting at the Chancellor's office. There was a lot of good discussion. What I wanted to let you know is that I actually talked to one of the subcommittee members the other day. So what I want to communicate to the group is that committee is underway right now. And so they should be getting back to you folks pretty soon.
Great, great.
Thanks for that, Doug.
Well, I'll chip in just a little bit. This is Jennifer Thornburg. I'm a geologist, but I appreciate that effort. I think that's well worthwhile. I think you're on a good track there.
Okay, then we'll continue making progress here. So transition to BU 2101. This is plan submittal requirements for schools participating in the SEEDS programs.
Thank you, Gonzalo. First, I want to thank Doug and Brian for joining us today and making a very good presentation. They could do it much better justice than I am because they were in the ground floor and developing it. So thank you, Doug. I really appreciate that, and Brian as well. BU 2101, we issued this last week. I wanted to clarify and discuss a little bit about what transpired with BU 2101. Last year, when AB 841 was passed, which provided stimulus funds to increase energy efficiency and indoor air quality at K-12 public schools and encourage them to improve their systems for school reopening. So that passed, and there was a provision in AB 841 that when taken out of its, when it was standing alone at section 1625, implied that all K-12 schools required carbon dioxide, excuse me, required carbon dioxide monitors in classrooms. We had sought a legal interpretation of that from our legal department, and they had stated that they believed that that was the case at the time. And so we issued what we called was IRN2, which kind of clarified the requirements that DSA was going to look for these in the projects that were in plan review and under construction. While we then proceeded to work with the California Energy Commission on requirements for participating in the school energy efficiency stimulus program. California Energy Commission was responsible for administering the funds that were provided through this program, and they wanted to know what DSA submittal requirements and when a submittal to DSA was required. And through that discussion, they had clarified that the requirement for carbon dioxide monitors in classrooms was only for those participating in the program. We sought an additional legal opinion based on that and pushed a little farther, and then it was determined that it is correct. It is only for those participating in the program. And so rather than create confusion in updating IRN2, and because the regulation wasn't applicable to, or I should say the statute wasn't applicable to all K-12 schools, only those participating in the program, we felt it would be better to retire IRN2, or actually I should state repeal IRN2, and replace it with this bulletin, which is 2101, which defines how we're going to apply plan review, or the projects, defines the requirements for the projects being submitted to DSA for those participating in this program. And essentially it's informational, and it doesn't really trigger a considerable amount. The projects are required to be submitted if they include HVAC improvements that actually trigger, certain requirements as per IRA 22, specifically structural improvements. Obviously, when structural improvements occur, then it triggers also other disciplines, fire, life safety, and access with those HVAC improvements. But all these projects, you would need to refer to IRA 22 to determine if, in fact, the project is exempt, and if not, it does require going through DSA for review. So it doesn't change the projects that come to us in review. It just clarifies that if IRA 22 indicates that it is not exempt, it does need to come to us. Again, if you have questions, you're always welcome to request a pre-application meeting. In this bulletin, it does go into detail about how we're going to plan review for those carbon dioxide monitors, because they are a requirement for those receiving funds. And a little bit about the importance of the carbon dioxide monitors. It really contributes to monitoring the indoor air quality in the classroom, which studies that have occurred prior to COVID and beyond, even going back 15 years ago, has demonstrated that the maintenance of facilities hasn't always kept up with ensuring that indoor air quality is managed and controlled and kept at the levels required by code. And the carbon dioxide monitors actually alert the teachers, or it alerts an emergency management system that is monitored by facility personnel somewhere else on the site. And it alerts them that there's a problem with the indoor air quality. And so therefore some action needs to be taken, whether determining system maintenance or functionality or filter replacement, whatever it is, but it does trigger that alert that the air quality is compromised in the classroom and has the potential to affect students. And so that way teachers can alert facility staff, or facility staff can be alerted through an energy management system that's monitored somewhere else on the site. So that is a requirement of the school energy efficiency stimulus program. Obviously, and return to school, indoor air quality is more important than ever. So that's why it places a priority on this, specifically also with carbon dioxide monitors for participating in the program. So we are still working with the Energy Commission on some of these details, but they do have a web page on their website. And it is, if you go to the Commission's website, energy.ca.gov, and you type in School Energy Efficiency Stimulus Program, you should get to the page. I believe they also have a notification on the cover page of their website. And if you have any questions, again, you're welcome to call me with regard to any of the requirements, specifically with Bulletin 2101 and the Energy Efficiency Program. And if you're inquiring as to whether or not the project needs to be submitted, we encourage you to contact the regional office, and if you need to set up a pre-application meeting as we had identified prior. So based on that, I'll take any questions. I guess there's no questions. Okay, back to you, Gonzalo.
Seeing no questions at this time, we can break early. That's our next scheduled slide for our meeting right now. So to stay in accordance with our agenda, we can just take an early break, stretch your legs, get some coffee, use the restroom, and we'll see you back at 10:15.
No, let's move it up, Gonzalo, if that's okay, because I think
And
it's 10 to 12 right now. If we're giving a 15-minute, yeah, like
No.
at least 10:10 or 10:05.
okay, how's that 10:10 work then?
Sure.
Okay, we'll see everyone back at 10:10. Thank you. And just remember to mute your mics, and we'll see you at 10:10. Welcome back, everyone. If you're joining us, if you could either turn on your camera or raise your hand, that way make sure that we have a quorum of people. Thank you. So looks like we're waiting on maybe just a few more people. Yeah, after the break, we'll transition into new items. So it'll be a brief overview of the draft rulemaking package of the 2022 California Title 24 Parts 1, 2, and 10, the draft proposals. That'll be Ryan and Diane that will provide that brief overview. All right, I think we have a good portion of the group back, enough to continue forward, so we'll get started. Thank you for those of you that turned on your cameras and raised your hand, just being engaged, so thanks a lot, and we'll get started. And Diane, Ryan, go ahead, jump in, and if you need me to click into the web page, just let me know, and I'll direct us to that page. Otherwise, the slide is yours.
Okay, great. Hello again, everyone. I'm Diane Gould, and I have Brian Huxley here for backup for any questions that might come up today. But as it says on the slide, we wanted to just briefly discuss the draft rulemaking package that you all should have received a couple weeks ago. It's explicitly our parts 1, 2, and 10 of what will become the 2022 California Title 24. And we have other groups within DSA that are working on the parts 3, 4, and 5, which are the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing codes. And then later on today, Ida is also going to be giving you some updates regarding access compliance and Cal Green Code.
She's having some difficulties on her end. She got logged out. Ryan, if you will, feel free to jump in.
All right, I will try to briefly state some of the things that Diane was noting here. I think she talked about how we're preparing our draft rulemaking package for DSA's structural safety amendments in what will become the parts 1, 2, and 10 of the 2022 California Building Code. She already mentioned that others are also working on other parts 3, 4, and 5, which Ida will be covering the access compliance in Cal Green. So this rulemaking process includes several milestones for review by various bodies, as well as an opportunity for public comment, similar to past code cycles. Ultimately, this rulemaking package will become the 2022 California Title 24, which will become effective January of 2023, with one exception to that being Part 1, the California Administrative Code, which goes into effect 30 days after it's approved by the Building Standards Commission and recorded with the State of Secretary. So that means Part 1 will be effective January or February, depending of 2022, depending on the filing date with the Secretary of State. So as you're aware, we shared our draft package and asked you to share with your industry associations, and the comments have been rolling in. So we appreciate that. Always good to get feedback. So it is important for us to hear and understand the perspective of all of those who use and are affected by these proposed regulations, such as design professionals, inspectors, testing laboratories, school districts and facilities managers, contractors, manufacturers, and so on. And to consider those perspectives in the development of our rulemaking package. So we greatly appreciate your attention and assistance with this effort.
I am sorry for the technical difficulties there. Well, first of all, I will say, are there any questions so far on what Ryan presented?
Go ahead and feel free to share your screen, or let me know if you need me to pull information up.
Okay, so I just wanted to, because I'm not sure, some of you might already be aware of Building Standards Commission's rulemaking process, but if not, there's this timeline right here, and then there's some notes over here. But what I want to point out is we're right here in what they call the pre-cycle. So, you know, the end of the road, the deadline is the effective date over here of the 2022 California Building Standards Code, our Title 24. So that'll go into effect January of 2023. So we have a lot of different milestones for review by different agencies and also opportunities for public comment. And I'm going to try to zoom this and make it a little bigger. So right now, what we're doing with this outreach to PSCC, also the meeting that I believe Ryan probably mentioned on March 17th, that's considered, our pre-cycle outreach, our state agency workshops. Ultimately, we DSA need to turn in our package to BSC at the beginning of May, and that's what starts the rulemaking cycle in my mind. So everything before that is what we call pre-cycle, and then this May date is when the 2021 triennial code adoption cycle starts. After the May date, they have a series of different code advisory committee meetings on different topics. You can see here there's access. I believe this stands for building, fire, and other structural. The ones in yellow are the ones that my group is involved with, the structural safety. So that's structural design and lateral forces committee. And then there's also health facilities. So I'm pointing these out because there's also opportunity for public comment and involvement during the code advisory committee, which will happen at the end of July for the structural design and lateral forces. I know Gonzalo is going to get to future meeting dates a little later in the program here, but we will, if there's an agenda to talk about, we will have the opportunity to meet again prior to the next code advisory committee. So I wanted you to know that this draft rulemaking is definitely a work in progress, and there will be room for refinement along the way. Then, of course, after the code advisory committee meetings, that's when it goes out for that 45-day public review that probably many of you have seen before. So that's a third opportunity for feedback, and then ultimately we are looking at the BSC meeting where the package would be adopted. That's actually, in the past, it's happened in December, but it looks like it's going to be happening in January of 2022. So anyway, I know this is kind of an action-packed slide, but I wanted to, just wanted to mention that there will be our March 17th meeting is one opportunity for feedback, but there's also more to come. I don't know if we have time today, but I wanted to point out as part of your package, you received the summary of significant changes document that was sent out along with the express terms and the statement of reasons that you all received to share with your industry groups. Our idea in putting this together was, we have a variety of folks we're reaching out to with a variety of items that may or may not be of interest to them. So we wanted a way that you could quickly identify a certain chapter or a section in the code that might be of interest to you, and then go quickly to the express terms or ISOR without having to try to fish through all that. Another item that I wanted to mention that has come up since, again, this is a work in progress, but another item that has come up since we sent you this package, and it's not reflected in the draft package you received, is that we are considering making some amendments regarding ICF, which is insulated concrete forms. It's it's like a foam and plastic form that they build a concrete wall with. We've been having some challenges on recent projects and learning from those. So we're looking into potentially adding some amendments to Chapter 19A, maybe 17A as well. And it would be things like, in order to specify the type of information that's required on approved construction documents, maybe some QA items like mock-up panel tests and clarification of special inspection requirements that would be unique to this type of construction. So that is kind of all the detail I wanted to go into today. I assume everyone received the materials from Gonzalo. As Ryan mentioned, the comments have been rolling in, and we anticipate some more up until the 17th. And once we get everything in, we're going to compile and digest all that. But was there anything in particular someone had a question on or wanted to bring up with the group today? or just a general question on anything we presented.
So it's a little bit of a short window for, for my organization, for CEOC, to distribute out to, the people that we charge with thinking about different things. I know we have a date that we're responding by. What happens after that date? Is there opportunity for late input if it percolates up?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, our challenge that I didn't even mention here. So we submit to Building Standards Commission in order to start the rulemaking process. May 3rd is considered our initial submittal. Another part of what we have to do that's not addressed here is that we have to submit our package to California Department of Finance. We have to do an analysis if there's any economic or fiscal impact of any provision in our package. And I mean, before it even gets to finance, it has to go through DGS, fiscal services, legal services. It goes to the director, it goes to the agency. So it's a long way of saying we actually have to submit a package to, we call it our fiscal package. Our deadline for that, just to get it through our internal processes, not related to this rulemaking cycle, is April 1st. What we're trying to do with this package is make sure we have anything, if there is going to be a fiscal impact, that we've kind of figured that out prior to April 1st. But some of these, we usually try our best to not have something that is going to have a fiscal or economic impact unless there's just some overarching reason why it must happen. What you should see is that the bulk of information in our package is not going to have a fiscal impact. So those are the things we can continue to adjust and receive comments on and refine, or maybe reconsider, depending on what comes in. So I've taken a long way at saying, yes, there's still time, because we try our best to make sure nothing has a fiscal impact. If there was something that came up in the comment process and affected something that did have a fiscal impact, then that would put us back through our department and agency again. But the simple answer is that yes, there's still more time. There's more time even up to May 3rd. There's even more time, before the July for code advisory meetings. And we can certainly, keep this group informed as to a more refined package. Maybe I'm kind of thinking on my feet here, Gonzalo, but maybe what we can do is after we submit our package in April, we can send it out to this group again for here's the updated version, if that would be helpful.
Okay.
Or would would you rather work with what you have? We could go either way, but I guess just let us know if you would like the updated version or continue to have folks digest what they have.
I think we'd have to consider that, case by case, whether the updated version is substantially different and the comments would be different on that updated version.
Agreed. So we can just maybe make a note of that. I think, yeah, in the interest of not confusing people, sometimes it's better to keep that initial version. And as you suggested, if we have something, for example, if we end up drafting those provisions for the ICF walls, that would be something new. And maybe we would just pull that out separately, like we did for the cargo containers. Just a thought. Thank you. Anything else?
Diane,
Ryan, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sorry, this is Jennifer. You say you're getting quite a few comments in. Is there anything that is particularly controversial or that's really attracted a lot of attention?
I have to admit, because some of the comments are coming to me and some of them are coming to Randy, and Randy's our analyst who is pulling all the nuts and bolts together of this package. So I can't say that I know right now all the comments that have come in, but one that we've gotten a lot of comments about is the relocation of the testing and inspection amendments that we have provisions in some of the material chapters that we feel would be better organized to be all in chapter 17A for our testing and inspection chapter. We did get some initial amendments, or excuse me, some initial comments that folks were concerned that might create a conflict or potential difficulty in coordinating with ICC in the future. And I don't know, I haven't heard back whether that it was understood that this is just amendment language that, you know, instead of it being in chapter 21A, we're moving it to chapter 17A, and we've tried to take an approach that if it's a design-based item, we're keeping it in the material chapter, but if it's a testing inspection related item, we're moving it to chapter 17A. And even where something is being moved, we're leaving a pointer back to 17A. So in case the user was used to finding those provisions in the material chapters, now they know to go to 17A. So that's, at least me personally, those are the ones that I heard about, but I don't know. Ryan Huxley, have you heard any other comments coming in so far?
Not beyond what you've noted.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Does anyone else have any questions? If not, we can continue into our presentation. So coming up next, we'll have some updates. That's what I see on our agenda here. Before we get to that, just a reminder that if you have any comments, just send those to Diane. And there is the pre-cycle public workshop meeting on March 17th. So that's coming up. And let me share that on my screen so you can see where you can find details there for that meeting. Then that will be a more comprehensive time to go over the information that was briefly presented today. So now we'll transition to updates. We'll discuss updates on CalGreen and also DSA access compliance.
Thanks, Gonzalo. Our access package is really quite small, which is unusual for this code cycle. A big part of it is because coming July 1st, 2021 is the implementation of our most recent rulemaking, which was approved last summer and dealt with improvements to the code that moved all of Chapter 11A into a Chapter 11B public housing so that you didn't have to refer to both documents and try to decipher what was applicable. So that was done for clarity. So all the requirements for housing, which if it is public housing, is now in 11B. And for most of you, if housing occurs on your campuses or on behalf of you, like at a community college, if it provides housings to the students, it would likely be public housing and housing at a place of education, one or the other. And so it's important to understand that the requirements that need to apply are all in 11B right now. So that is done. And we are developing a housing guide to assist in designing towards the requirements in 11B for housing. Also, we did a big overhaul on detectable warnings last rulemaking cycle. Those will become effective July 1st of this year. And we will also be developing a design guide with regard to detectable warnings. And there are additional requirements in the electric vehicle charging station regulations. The most significant change is that for every level of charging you have, the table applies for the accessibility requirements. Again, we're also developing resources to design guide and our informational video. We're working on that now to have it ready for July 1st so that when the supplement actually takes effect, those resources are out there. So because our last rulemaking cycle was quite intensive in addressing these three issues, our upcoming rulemaking cycle, which is for the 2022 code effective January 1st, 2023, we really have some minor items because we really want to focus on our resources that educate as opposed to code amendments. So the code amendments that are being produced are really just clarity items. There's nothing new being introduced. It's just as an overview, it's clarifying requirements, improving some of the definitions that help provide greater clarity on the application of the regulations that exist. We are separating the requirements for entrances and ground floor exits. Right now, they're together. So we're going to establish the requirements for exterior ground floor exits are actually being moved to the accessible means of egress scoping requirements. So again, the requirements remain the same, but by moving them into its appropriate section, we actually add additional clarity. And then just couple other edits on a signage for electric vehicle charging, the height requirements. Again, that is pretty much the extent of our changes, really dealing with clarity. So that we can focus on our design guide and resources for the upcoming supplement, and also provide assistance on especially the application of the new requirements for detectable warnings, because those are very important to design as opposed to check for code compliance. We're trying to give assistive resources to designers of things to consider in the application of detectable warnings and how to work with the code so that they are not being used excessively. In fact, for detectable warnings, when they are used excessively, that actually decreases accessibility. And so we want to make sure that they're used correctly, judiciously for all individuals with disabilities, obviously, because even though the purpose are for those with visual impairments, we know that they actually do create sometimes access conditions or for individuals who use mobility impairments. With regard to Cal Green, Gonzalo, did you want to bring up my slide for Cal Green?
Yes, we can go on to.
Actually, let me just start here on our update, because then we can go through. I just wanted to give you an idea of projects on the boards. This is our February workload. It's over 1 billion. We are still absorbing it. So these projects were submitted in February, and we are working through them. I just wanted to give you a snapshot to let you know how busy we are at DSA, which is good news for our economic climate and good news for all of you and good news for us. And hopefully this workload will continue, because I think the work we do really starts to assist California in coming out of COVID. So I'm pleased to see this workload, and I'm pleased to see my staff is busy. Next slide, please, Gonzalo. This is just a little bit of what's happening. This is as of yesterday, updated as of yesterday. March is 650 million, and then April is now at 404 million. However, the new daily submittal came in today, and I believe that number's already up to 500 million. So you can see that we continue to be busy. Next slide, please. A little bit about the IRs. I spoke to BU 2101 earlier, so I won't address that again, but I did want to call your attention to cargo containers used as laboratory units. A lot of schools are actually trying to address testing concerns on campus, and so IRA 34 addresses those units that are placed on school campuses but are not actually used by faculty and students. And so there's requirements for them in IRA 34. So you can check that out if that is related to your school COVID reopening. Next slide, please, Gonzalo. Okay, so now I'll get to our Cal Green Code. We have been in very intensive discussions this week. So our original proposal was to include at least one minimum level 2 charger, but that has now changed as of this week. This is the new table. So actually I should have corrected that requirement on that proposal. Maybe more is actually applicable now. 20% of actual total parking spaces is being proposed for all non-residential in California. Again, this aligns with Governor Newsom's goals to transition our car fleet the vehicle usage in California to electric vehicles to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so this is quite ambitious. The present requirements are to have in the code right now that are in effect is actually 10% of total. Or I should clarify, will be in effect as of July 1st of this year is 10% of the total parking. For January 1st, 2023, it is being increased to 20% of total parking. Of those, 25% need to have chargers installed. So that's how you apply this table. So for example, if you have 51 to 75 parking spaces, you will require 10 charging spaces, of which 3 of those spaces need to have equipment installed, level 2 minimum. There are some requirements for a little bit of trade-offs. So for each of those 10 spaces, using the example of 51 to 75 spaces, using that 10, each space of those 10 requires a 40 amp circuit to be provided to it. However, when you install those chargers at the time of construction, so that 3, if you increase that number 3, you can actually use a load management system that can decrease your panel capacity for those 10. Of course, that has to happen during the time of the construction project. And so it is trying to incentivize getting more than the minimum installed by reducing the panel capacity that's provided. So that's the proposal that is come about this week, and we are working on that still in the cost numbers. Like Diane said, we do have to provide cost justification to the Department of Finance. We do have another CalGreen workshop scheduled for March 29th, 2021. That is in conjunction with Building Standards Commission. Our green outreach is usually in conjunction with them because many of our items are co-adopted. And so we will be discussing this quite thoroughly, this new proposal for electric vehicle charging. Again, this is only for new parking areas and additions to parking areas. It does not affect modernization to parking facilities presently. We also have other requirements on CalGreen, clarification on shade trees for K-12 schools specifically. It's addressing play areas on hardscape. You can actually, if it's marked and defined, like your 4 square courts or basketball courts or any of those, if they are marked and defined courts, you can actually exclude them from the calculation for the minimum coverage for shade trees aggregate. And then we are still looking at requirements for CO2 monitors in classrooms. As I stated before, this would be for new construction and modernization projects, and that because the concern of indoor air quality has really been a source of discussion. And so we are anticipating that placing those requirements for new construction and modernizations through the code through CalGreen. Again, all these proposals will be further discussed at the March 29th workshop, but I can take questions right now on the CalGreen proposals.
Hi, yeah, I have a question. You said this applies to new construction. Would it apply to new buildings on existing campuses if there was a new 2-story classroom building on an existing high school campus?
You mean the EV charging? The EV charging only applies to parking areas. So if there is a new parking area, that's part of the project. So it doesn't really relate to building construction. It specifically relates to parking lot construction, parking structures, and additions if you're increasing the parking area of any area you have.
Okay, thanks.
And also if you, since this is in CalGreen, again, because it's for new construction only, if you're actually adding electric vehicle charging to an existing facility, this table would also not apply. That is a project where all those requirements are handled from a voluntary perspective. So if you are actually bringing in electric vehicle charging into any existing parking structure or parking lot, this table would not apply. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Gonzalo, do you want going to the next slide? All right, so a little update on the energy code. The Green Team has been working with the Energy Commission along with the AB 841 requirements. We've also been working on the 2022 Energy Code for School. As you know, there is, with every energy code that's going to be coming, the requirements are going to be tamping down for energy efficiency, but also addressing zero emissions. So just what's coming for January 1st, 2023, the prescriptive method of building, using the prescriptive method and using the performance method, they will be based on heat pump technology for water and HVAC systems, so all electric systems. If you are using the performance method and want to use gas, you're actually going to need to beef up your envelope in order to have that trade-off, because the energy budget in the performance method is based on electricity usage or electrified elements. It's not based on any fossil fuels, gas, natural gas. They are considering, actually what they are proposing right now is for climate zones 2 to 15 using these heat pump technology systems. For zones 1, which is the Sierra Nevada, and for zone 16, which is the northern coast, because those temperature extremes can fluctuate greatly, that you can meet the requirements with dual fuel systems. So that's how the structure is right now. They are also making a requirement that for every new structure, photovoltaics will be required either on the building or added to the site in some location, and you'll have to identify where that is. So there is a requirement to calculate the energy usage or the area of the photovoltaics and actually define where they are. So that's what's being proposed right now, and they are actually going out to their 45-day comment period I believe at the end of this month or next month. So if you're interested in commenting on the building efficiency standards for the 2022 code, there is a link to sign up for the information from the Energy Commission and receive the updates as to when you can actually provide comment at public meetings and even through an email process through the official rulemaking in the 45-day. Any questions on the energy code? I'll try to answer them. Yeah, one more slide. Okay, so a little bit about our sustainability outreach and education. I wanted to let you know that the Energy Commission specifically has worked with National Energy Management Institute, and they have developed a free training on mechanical acceptance testing. So right now, when your projects are under construction, in order to comply with the energy code, they are required to undergo mechanical and electrical acceptance tests. For the mechanical acceptance, the electrical acceptance tests are required to be performed by a certified testing technician. The mechanical at this time are not. The contractor can actually perform the test. However, the Energy Commission states that when they have 300 energy certified technicians, they can actually make it a requirement. And so that is happening soon. And so in order to test, to let contractors, design professionals, facility managers know what that entails in order to pass the acceptance test training, the acceptance tests that are required by the Energy Code, they have this video. It actually educates as to how the tests are performed. What's important with this training that's available to all of you is that once you have the facility turned over to you, you can actually use the Energy Commission's forms and the testing to perform the tests yourself and ensure that your systems are operating efficiently. So it's actually kind of like a commissioning process going on forward. You can actually use the forms and the method to test your systems that they're working operationally effectively as they are designed and troubleshoot any problems. And so by taking the free training, you'll know how to do that. And so that's why we offer it to everyone. And a link to that training is on our website. It'll actually take you to the NEMIC website. We're also working with an electrical organization who's going to be providing the same type of training for the electrical systems that will be forthcoming hopefully later this year. And then just if you want information about our Getting to Zero Overtime K-12 Schools cohort, which is the cohort that we have with New Buildings Institute, and it's to encourage school districts to develop sustainability programs and get to zero net energy, zero carbon over time through their portfolio and give them resources to actually document how to get there, plan how to get there, and also how to engage the design professionals through contracting and requests for qualifications so that every building and every improvement that happens, that over time the goal is to get the school districts to net zero energy and net zero carbon. We do have an informational video about the program, and that's on our link on our new Achieving Net Zero Energy and Net Zero Carbon in School Facilities webpage. More resources are going to be coming soon to that webpage, but this is where you will find the link to both these programs in case you're interested in more information. And I believe that's my last slide. So if there's any questions, I can take those now.
All right. So we have some upcoming meeting dates. This is based off the poll that was sent out, and thank you for everyone that responded. These were dates that the majority of collaborative members are available to meet. So if you would just add these to your calendar as save the date. Just because we have these scheduled does not mean that DSA anticipates the collaborative meeting on each of these dates, but just as placeholders moving forward throughout the year. Again, we'll do our best to let you know at least 2 weeks prior if these dates will be canceled. So if the June date is not happening, you can expect an email from myself letting you know to remove that from your calendars. And in addition to these dates, do our best to get you the agenda and informational materials relevant to meetings that will be hosted within a similar time frame in advance of the meeting.
All right. Well, Gonzalo, I think that brings us to the end of our meeting, does it not?
Yes, that does bring us to the end of our meeting.
Again, we said we wanted to respect your time as much as possible. Obviously, everything that we've presented today, we will take feedback on. If you have any further inquiry, please reach out to us. Most of our emails are on the website. We will try to keep you informed. I want to thank you for your time today because this outreach is important to our rulemaking process. We can actually consider it a demonstration of part of our outreach, which is integral to the process, required by law, and also our ability to be able to let you know what's coming. Again, if you have any comments, questions, please be sure to email us and we can get you further information. Subscribe. But if you have anything that you want to add and discuss in any future meetings, please reach out to Gonzalo and we will agendize the item and try to bring all the necessary information to you. So thank you all for joining. And if you don't have anything else, or if anyone else doesn't have any questions.
We had Susan. I'll reach out to you following the meeting. I know you were interested in one of the chair or vice chair roles, so I'll be sure to touch base with you. But if anybody else is interested, feel free to speak up at this time or just send me an email and we can talk further. But
thanks. And if you need to, she volunteered. You can also reach out to Susan and she can bring any issues to us for any future meetings for discussion. So thank you, all of you. I appreciate it.